So is sensory processing disorder, is it like a range? So like if someone's diagnosed with that, they must meet certain criteria. Like I'm just thinking like a psychologist to have that diagnosis, but are there kids that struggle with just like sensory issues but don't necessarily have a diagnosis?
Yeah, so that's exactly it. So technically, the DSM, I think we're on DSM-5. SPD, sensory processing disorder, is not a standalone diagnosis right now.
Hmm.
It's under the umbrella of autism or ADHD and anxiety. And I think there might be one more that I'm missing, but it's not a standalone thing. So if a child is showing sensory processing challenges, yet the diagnosing clinician doesn't think this kid doesn't have autism, they don't have anxiety, they don't have ADHD, then they'll just say it's a phase or it's a behavioral issue or it's a parenting issue. There's like a whole slew of reasons that a child with just SPD may slip through the cracks. And
Mm.
yes, it is a spectrum. There are some like mild sensory processing challenges, and there are some more dysfunctional, extremely impactful sensory processing disorder type things. And we really differentiate it more as like a sensory quirk and more of a disorder when you need intervention. And really the difference is when, like most cognitive and psychological disorders and diagnoses, is when it really impacts your daily functioning, right? When it starts impacting your ability. When we're talking about a child, there things that are most important to them in their daily life are school, social life, and like things at home, like taking baths, eating, um, you know, getting dressed, all of those things. So what makes it really tricky is when you have kids with sensory quirks. Like if we're talking about even just adults, right? I don't like mushrooms. I am so over responsive. I'm very sensitive to movement. Like I hate loopy rides. I don't know about you, but some people love them. There's some things that we love a lot. There's some things that we cannot stand. But like it doesn't, I don't have a panic attack in front of a roller coaster. It doesn't stop me from going to theme parks for a friend's birthday party. I won't like vomit at the sight of mushrooms. I might just
Mm.
like casually peel them off my pizza, right? It doesn't impact me to the point where it's like prohibiting me from functioning in daily life. So that's really the difference between a sensory quirk and sensory processing disorder. So it's not standalone. So there's not really criteria for it, but they
Oh,
would
okay.
show. So it's part of, when I say it's part of, it would be like under autism, they might say a child with autism is more likely to experience signs of sensory processing disorder. There's three main profiles that could be focused on. And one of them is being over responsive. And that's what I specialize in, the sensory sensitivity. These are kids who have a small sensory cup. So an input can be sights, smells, tastes, feelings, sounds, movements. Any of those inputs throughout your day kind of start filling up your sensory cup. If you have a small sensory cup, a low threshold, you are over responsive. That means that you respond to input more often than someone else. And then there's two other profiles. One on the other side of the spectrum is the sensory seekers. These kids have big cups with like a hole in the cup. You cannot satiate their need for input. These are the kids that move super fast, super hard. They love loud sounds. They'll like roll around in the mud. They just cannot get enough of things. They get mislabeled or misunderstood as like behavior, like bad kids, because they often can just be like, they'll squeeze so hard and they'll run so fast that they hit another kid on accident. They just have such low body awareness.
Hmm.
um, and they have a really hard time controlling that need for input, so they will like touch everything, and like even though you're like, don't touch it, stop touching. And then the middle of the spectrum sort of is, they also have a big cup, a big sensory cup. These are called under responders. But instead of seeking the input, they end up like, these kids are more sedentary. They sometimes appear lazy or withdrawn. They're kind of slower to warm up. and they just don't prefer to move or get sensory input, even though that their body needs more than neurotypical people. They need more, but they don't know it, like the seekers who need more and they seek it out. These under responders need more to be alert, to focus, to participate in daily things, but they need kind of like parents to be like, wake up, like let's move. They seem like they're always tired,
Mm.
but they get enough sleep, and it's not a sleep thing. It's just their body just needs a little bit more sensory input to wake up. So it's harder to kind of motivate these kids.